5, we have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck. Hey, everybody. I am Captain Tommy Scoville, and you're on the lifeboat. Good to see you all. Wow, we got a good crew. Andy Paul, Dennis M. Hunt, Dennis Bruce, Charlie Murphy, good to see you. Virginia T. Prada, Horton, good to see you, Horton. Glad that you're here. Let me see if I missed anybody. I missed a bunch of people. Seventh Son, Shimmy Dubois. Glad that you're here. Virginia, always a pleasure. I know I said M. Hunt. Let's just say it again. I know I missed a bunch of you, but if I try to go through, I'm just going to repeat a bunch of names because I'm not very good at this. And I'm liable to block people by trying to, let me see if I can get this thing to where it's supposed to be. It just wants to go in the wrong direction. Speaking of wrong directions, hello, cat. Squirrel, good to see you. She tries to grab the microphone on the way to the chair. But if I leave her back here, she's going to bite the camera and try to knock over the tripod and then the lighting equipment. She's just incorrigible, this cat. There you go. Get in the basket. Good to see everybody. I want to thank everybody that reached out to me on the video I did on Easter. And a real shout out to those that said, you know what, I don't believe in a God, but I wasn't even slightly offended by anything that you said. I think that that's a beautiful thing, and it shows a whole lot of love. And you know what? That's what we're going to be talking about today. This is one of those videos that, honestly, maybe is more appropriate for the families of those in recovery than it is for people in recovery. But we get some crossover, which is unfortunate. So we're going to be talking about that too. The truth of the matter is this: I don't have a lot of initials after my name. I have said from the very first time that I started this is not supposed to take the place of any medical advice. It's not supposed to take the place of any psychological advice either. I am a crew member on the lifeboat. I get to wear a cool shirt and sit in a nice chair, but I'm another person in recovery. That's what I am. And I have spent the vast majority of my life either in recovery or in active addiction. And there are things that jump out at you. And we don't talk about them enough because we're in the process of recovery. Sometimes we lose sight of some of the real truisms. Hobotographer, good to see you. Tell you what, the guy's got talent. I'm going to be trying to debut some of the pictures that this guy takes on the boat. I'm going to be using some of them for backdrops, but he's just a really, really talented photographer. A lot of talented people on the boat. There really are. And, you know, some of them we get to see and some of them you don't. I do. And other people don't, which is unfortunate. But you guys have seen M. Hunt play. There's a lot of talent here. And sadly, when you become addicted to drugs, the rest of the world focuses on that. And it becomes the focus of everything. Sadly, we get peeled away. And the only thing that is left is the fact that we cannot control our use of substances. It's a disease, and a lot of people who are not in recovery have a real issue with the disease concept, which is sad. It's a medical fact at this point. It's not debatable. There are people that still want to debate it. I was on that panel a couple of weeks ago where there was a gentleman that just can't handle the concept that this really is a absolute, testable, verifiable, legitimate disease. And that disease makes it so that we lose the ability to control substances that we have used in our lives. And they're substances very often that the vast majority of people who are not addicted to drugs have experimented with. However, it grabs us in a way that it doesn't grab other people. We have the inability to control these because we are born with a void that we try to fill with everything under the sun until we realize that there are ways to remain sober, and there are ways to get through life without using a chemical as a coping skill. It's a long process, and it's a process that unless you've been a part of, even if you watch it from a distance, it's not something that the average person understands, which is why group therapy is so popular. Sadly, the people that don't understand very often, instead of just sitting by and watching us try to do what we do, they decide to weigh in on our issues, and they decide to lend advice, and they decide to lend commentary. And sadly, that commentary is laced with hate, even if they don't realize that it is. Very often, loved ones will say things that are so hateful, it's unbelievable, and they just don't know any better. And they don't always have to be loved ones. They can just be people in the outside world who don't understand what you're going through. And we get all kinds of advice like, if you had more willpower, or if you were a better person. Sadly, you get that constantly. And what this does more often than not is make the individual who feels uncomfortable in their own skin feel even more uncomfortable. Another way you could think about it is we feel broken. We don't feel like we got the equipment that everybody else got. People that are able to cope with situations that are overwhelming without a substance to knock the edges off have no concept what that feels like. And sadly, instead of bringing love to the party, they bring hate. And this comes out in so many different forms. We have technology now for the first time ever. Technology is starting to gain traction in recovery. And there are a lot of different medical assisted treatments and things that are coming out. And sadly, there are a lot of people on this planet that believe any kind of medical assisted treatment is just another form of drug addiction. And if that's your thought, if that's something that makes sense to you, do everybody a favor and shut up. Seriously. Watch how much better your loved one does if you just stop trying to comment on how they try to get sober. I did a show the other day where I talked about trading one drug for another. This gets me more hate mail than just about anything I talk about. And the amazing thing is, it doesn't get me hate mail from the people on the boat. It gets me hate mail from people in the recovery community. And I'll say what I've said, and I'll repeat it. I say it a lot. But if there's somebody smoking a half an ounce of crack a week, right? Or an ounce of crack a week, somebody smoking 3 or 4 grams a day. And then that person trades that for cannabis. Where's the problem with that scenario? Honestly, would it be better if the person was on nothing? I'm of the firm belief that everything would be better if people were on nothing. And that includes methadone, Suboxone, any of the medications that we use to get off of the substances that we're on. Would we be better off without those? You betcha. We would. And if you happen to be on one of those substances, you can say, we'd be better off without this. If you're not on one of those substances, and you've never been on one of those substances, and you don't understand what that does to assist somebody who has never been able to get clean, you need to shut up. Because it doesn't help. In fact, whether you realize it or not, your commentary, more often than not, just feels like hate. And I'm of the firm belief that the greatest weapon that we have against addiction is love. You don't go to too many places on the interweb where you see more people that say I love you than you're going to come across anywhere else than the Love Boat, right? We really are a group of people that care about one another in spite of the fact that we've never met each other. And there are people who can't understand that concept as well. There are people who are creeped out by that concept because they just don't get it. But we all have had to walk a road that we landed ourselves on. I have no issue whatsoever with saying that I put myself into the situation that I ended up in. If I had been smart enough to say no to drugs from the first time I was offered them, then there never would have been a lifeboat and there wouldn't have been a need for any of this. By the way, Conky Donged, your comment meant a ton to me. It really did. Conky Dong commented on yesterday's show as well, and I really appreciate your comment. It came from a place of love. And the more that happens around here, the more people tend to get better. It really is pretty simple stuff. It really is. The more we care for one another and the more we care for ourselves, the faster we get clean, the faster we get healthy, and the faster we enter normal society. I don't know about the rest of you, but I was not a productive member of society when I was on drugs. Obviously, my story is well known, and I was really the extreme in that story. But everybody struggles to be part of the world that we live in when we're using. I got a message from somebody across the pond that said, I can't thank you enough for the things that you said at the end of yesterday's video. And I had to go back and listen to the end of that video to know what he was talking about, because I don't do most of these with a script. So very often it's like a stream of consciousness, and I can lose track of what I was talking about from one show to the next. It's pretty easy to do. But what I was talking about is this. In fact, his comment was the reason for this video. He said, I want to thank you for not kicking me off of the boat or kicking anyone off of the boat who still uses. Can you imagine having to thank someone for that? That's the world. That's the world of sobriety. You come to a AA meeting and you've had 2 drinks and they tell you need to leave. I wonder how many people are dead because of that concept. I wonder how many people went back out and died because they weren't allowed in to a meeting that they showed up at because they didn't want to use anymore. Whether you've had 2 drinks or whether you've had 16 drinks, if you take yourself down to an AA meeting, it's because you really have gotten to a point where you don't want to do this anymore. And you need to be hugged. Because that's a step. And it's a step that the average person will never understand. It's a difficult thing to say, I can't control this. It's a difficult thing to say, I'm without any power at all in my life to control this substance, and it's destroying me. When a person needs love more than anything else, more often than not, they get hate. And maybe it's hate with the best of intentions, but that's still hate. Well, we can't let this person in. They may trigger somebody. Okay, great. Get a section of the room for those who are going to be triggered. Get a section of the room for those who really need to be there. Maybe there needs to be meetings where everybody there's got a buzz. And you could sort of step them off into a system. The beautiful thing about this format is that nobody can smell your breath. Nobody can look at your eyes. No one's going to judge you. And that, I can't take a whole lot of credit for that either. It evolved, as we went. I did say in the beginning that I didn't want to see anybody kicked off the boat for doing drugs, because that's like telling someone who shows up for cancer treatment that can't have you here. You have cancer. It doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? But we have the only disease out there that somebody, I think it was Pagan, sent me a really funny comedy bit from a guy that said, if somebody says, hey, I think you're an alcoholic, you never hear somebody say, hey, I think you have lupus. And it's funny, but it's not, because it's really what is happening to most people who try to get sober. the people around them have a way of making you feel worse at a time where you really don't need any help feeling worse. I think that there's a common misconception among people who are not in recovery that those of us who have a drug problem giggle about our drug problem. We find it amusing. We enjoy going out and partying. That's air quotes. I'm not going to take the time to stick my hands in. But I don't know anybody that parties. I really don't. People who party on substances usually aren't addicted to them. If you go out on the weekends and drink for the purpose of having a party, you're probably not an alcoholic. Alcoholics are sneaking those drinks in the morning so that people don't know they're doing them. And then they don't go to around other people. They sit and just get as much into them as they can so that they can numb whatever feeling has driven them to be an addict in the first place. If anything ever good came out of this channel, that would be the thing that I would wish for, is that people can't come to realize just how much more good that you can do by just trying to care. Even if you have no conception whatsoever, if somebody in your life is addicted to drugs and you can't comprehend it, maybe if you just say, I love you, I'm so sorry you're struggling with this. If there's something that I can do to help, I know I don't understand, but if there's something I can do to help, let me know. There's a movement, and the radio show, we're still waiting for it to be put up, and I'll let you guys listen to it when they finally post it. They're about a month behind. They're adding the shows, but since the show had changed names, they're about 30 days behind on getting up content. But when I was doing the interview, the gentleman, there was a lady and a guy who were the hosts of this show, and the guy was the bad cop, and she was kind of the good cop. And he said that I guess I just come from a place more of tough love. Tough love is a great concept. That's where you say to somebody, you got to leave. You're not coming into my house if you're addicted to opiates. You got to go. 350 people minimum are going to die today of overdoses. And I wonder how many of them had loved ones that said, you need to leave this place so that you can go somewhere alone where no one's going to see when you overdose. No one can do anything to stop it. People are going to die tonight behind dumpsters, behind bars, in alleys, because there won't be anybody there that loves them. That's a pretty rough concept. Tough love sounds great when you say it out loud, until it's your kid. And you get a phone call that says, that kid you told you couldn't stay in the house because they were using, they're dead. Pretty ugly, right? It's pretty tough stuff. I'm all for tough love. Tough love says this: I'm not letting you do this. Now get your butt in this house. We're going to get you sober. I'm not gonna feed your habit anymore. I'm not going to help you get more dope, and you're not leaving. That's tough love. I said on a show recently that if my friend was addicted, I would not do anything to help that person get more dope. I wouldn't. Now, let me correct that. If the person has a medical assisted treatment on Friday and it's Wednesday, I'm going to do everything I can to not leave them until then. And if I got to buy their bags until then, I want to be there when they use them, because I know exactly what will happen. If left to their own devices, not only are they going to continue to use, but as Wednesday starts to roll around or Friday starts to roll around, they're not going to make that appointment. See, they'll talk themselves out of it. All of the reasons why it's just not going to work and they're going to end up using again, they'll talk themselves out of it. No, I would tie a rope from one belt loop to the other, and I wouldn't let that person out of my sight. That's tough love. We need to get to a place in this country where we don't treat addicts like criminals. If we want to see more of these people alive and not dead, then that concept of, well, I'm just going to force this individual. Yeah, how'd that work out? Honestly, if this was just a matter of willpower, nobody would be here right now. Honestly. has nothing to do with willpower. If it was just that simple, this wouldn't be a billion-dollar industry, this whole recovery thing. You know how much money people pay to try and recover? The amount of money that gets spent every single year in this country to try to help people get off of chemicals. And you know why that happens seriously more often than not? Because the people around them don't want to deal with it. For real. If they sat down and said, what do we got to do? Seriously, explain your addiction to me. Make me understand it. I'm willing to listen. I'm not going to judge you. Tell me what's going on. You're addicted to opiates. Okay. Let's get online and see what happens. Right? What kind of treatments are out there for people on opiates? If you sat down and read about medical assisted treatment and found out that there's stuff out there that you can actually give to somebody that will keep them from feeling the need to feed that monster. But they won't do that. They'll yell and they'll call the person weak. They'll tell them that they're a disgrace, they're a disappointment, they're an embarrassment. And what we will do is pile on a bunch of emotions that a drug addict can't cope with. See, that's the problem with drug addicts. They can't cope with emotions that they don't know how to cope with. So instead, they drug or drink their way to feeling okay about who they are. And sadly, people do a fantastic job of forcing that person to not only not get sober, but to need more chemical. Addicts don't need any help feeling worse about who they are. Sounds really funny. It really does. Saying that out loud sounds funny. But that's really what the vast majority of the world does to addicts. They make them feel worse about themselves, not realizing that that is the reason that they get high in the first place, because they don't feel good about who they are. It's really kind of a sad concept if you think about it. I like the idea of tough love, but I think it needs to be love first and tough second, not the other way around. You know, drawing that line in the sand. You get high, you're never coming home again. Probably right. Probably right. In 2023, if you say to a loved one, you're never coming home again, oh, they'll come home in a body bag. That's where we're at. Because it doesn't matter if you're snorting blow or if you're smoking meth, right? It really doesn't matter what drug you're on these days. It's cut with poison. So if you really want your loved one to get well, maybe you should invite them in instead of kick them out. Invest time. It's amazing how many parents have offered me money to take their kids. No joke. I get that offer all the time. And I have to say, I'm not a counselor. I'm just a guy in recovery that has a show. But people will catch 2 or 3 of these shows and think that if they send their kid to me, maybe I can fix them. And there's no way to make those people understand that if you're going to fix that kid, you would be the best bet. Sadly, I think that it sounds ugly to say it. It really does. But it probably bears, it needs to be said. When you find your kid with a bag of dope, or you find out that your kid has a drug habit, try to remember what it felt like when the doctor handed you that kid. Because the way you felt that day is the kind of love you're going to have to show if you want that person to get out of the problem that they're in. Because it is a huge problem. It's a medical problem. They have a disease. They have the only disease known to man that tells you that you don't have a disease. Nobody ever finds out that they have cancer and says, I don't have cancer. I'm not going in for radiation or chemo. I got this. Seriously, all I have to do is change up a little bit and I'll be fine. There's no problem with that. You have diabetes. I don't need insulin. I got this under control. I'm just going to change when I eat, how I eat, and who I eat with. Everything will be fine. Ridiculous, right? Why is it that every other disease doesn't have a title that goes with it? If you say the word drug addict, there's a whole plethora of crap that instantly comes into someone's head. Oh, they're addicted. What are they addicted to? Meth. Instantly. You're thinking sunken eyes, no teeth, right? All of the things that they put out there. They have billboards, right, that say the faces of meth. You think that billboard helps people get sober? Seriously. Who the hell thinks this stuff up? They certainly never consulted with anybody that ever got sober before you put something like that on a billboard. You should put a sign up that says, if you're on meth, run. Keep doing your dope and don't tell anybody you're on it. That's exactly what that sign's telling people. Plain and simple. And if that sign is up there to keep kids from doing it, I got news for you. That's never worked either. That scared straight crap. When has it ever worked? It would be great if it did, but it doesn't. And once again, I hate to sound like a jackwagon, but it's just so easy, right? Truthfully, you want to raise a drug-free kid? It's not going to be easy. It's going to require you sitting down and having really long conversations with your loved one. Sitting your child down and saying, we're going to talk about drugs for the next 4 hours. I've said this before, and you can't say it enough. Of the 350 people that are going to overdose and die today, whose lives are going to end on this planet because of drugs, do you think any of them had a parent that said, do drugs? Get out there, do some, try it all. You're going to love it. Maybe 1 in 20,000 or something. The vast majority of those people who are going to overdose and die today were told, just say no to it. Don't do drugs. It'll ruin your life. Sorry, that's not enough. It's not. You have to make somebody understand why people do drugs in the first place. Imagine saying to somebody who is 13 or 14, there are people out there who just don't feel right in their own skin. They're uncomfortable all the time, and they can't understand why. You have that kind of conversation, and you might have your kid look at you and go, that's me. That's me. I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. If you had that conversation before that kid ever got high, what would happen? We don't know, do we? I don't think that ground has been plowed yet. I don't think that there's enough research on that subject. But those are the kind of conversations that we have to have with kids. When I started the lifeboat, I said, if we're going to win the war on drugs, you got to win it from the demand side, not the supply side. People are going to continue to smuggle that stuff across the border, even if they know that getting caught is going to land them in prison, because one load will make them 5 years worth of the amount of money that they make in their country. That's a big, big, big draw, right? That's the kind of thing that will make somebody take a risk. So I believed that the only way to win was on the demand side, which meant parents talking to kids before they ever got into drugs. I'm of the firm belief now that we can't win the war on drugs. It's a horrible feeling, especially when you really started this thing with the idea that you could. But I don't think we can. So it has to become just wanting to win the battle, wanting to make sure that your loved ones don't overdose, that you're not somebody that gets that phone call. So if by some chance you're hearing my voice and you're not a drug addict, I can assure you that what you don't want more than anything in the world is for someone to call you to tell you that your son or daughter has overdosed. If you can take that and digest it, then anything else is possible. if that is the reality that can happen and is happening more often than car wrecks or cancer, as far as killing people in this country, then you're left with the decision of, what can I do? And what you can do is have long, exhaustive conversations with your kid about drugs, which means being open to whatever they say. If you sit down to have a very long conversation about drugs with your kid and they say, well, I have smoked pot, that's the only drug I've done, and you come unglued and start screaming at the top of your lungs about what an awful child they are, do you think they're going to continue that conversation with you? They're not. And if you think logically, you may think that you're angry enough to yell because of how much you love your kid. It doesn't sound like love to your kid. It sounds like hate. Sometimes the logical isn't logical. Sometimes the things that make sense in your head don't make any sense at all in the real world. If your kid says, yeah, I've smoked some pot, you know what he's saying? I trust you enough to tell you that I did this. You won the lottery. You won the lottery. Your kid trusts you enough to tell you that he smoked weed or she smoked weed. You just won the lottery. You have an opportunity to have a conversation with your child that is life-changing. But how many parents do you think go that route? And how many parents do you think just start screaming? Who did you do it with? Tony? You can never go near Tony ever again. That's not going to keep them off of a cold metal table at the morgue. Ugly, right? It's not even nice to hear that said out loud. But sometimes it has to be said. We've reached a point in our country where the number one cause of death is drugs. I should probably not say anything for about a minute and let that one sink in. That's the number one cause of death in our country. And if you think it's going to get better, the drugs are getting stronger, not weaker. Drug dealers aren't saying, well, we need to step this stuff down so that less people die and we'll make more money. Okay? Because if our customers don't die, we'll be able to sell more of this garbage. That's not how it's working. In fact, they decided that xylazine would be a great thing to cut this dope with. Let's add a tranquilizer made for horses to an opiate made for elephants. What could possibly go wrong? Welcome to 2023 in America, where painkillers made for pachyderms are mixed with equine tranquilizers. Maybe the conversations that you have with your kids about drugs need to change. For real. Maybe you need to discuss every single substance. Let's talk about weed. Is it going to kill you? No, it's not. It's not going to kill you. Don't lie to your kids. It's not going to kill you. It's not. It's also not going to make you penniless and you're not going to, end up living on the street because you need your habit. No, it's not that drug. And if you compare it to alcohol, it's probably safer. How about not lying? How about just going that route? Now, do I want you on it? No, I don't. And when you hit 18, if you want to smoke that crap for the rest of your life, that's on you. In my house, I really don't want you on it. There are a lot of reasons, legitimate ones. If you start smoking dope when you're 13, you will actually lose brain cells by the time you are, or not brain cells, I apologize. You will lose IQ points as much as 8. And that may not sound like a lot, but it's a crap load. 8 IQ points is huge. And that's a fact. I don't lie about drugs. That's a fact. There's all kinds of science to back it up. So if you want to start smoking when you're 18, great. I'd rather you didn't do it under my house, right? Under my roof. But let's talk about the other drugs because they can kill you. And the sad thing is, we've been telling kids forever that these drugs that couldn't kill them could kill them. So we lost a hell of a lot of credibility. Generational credibility is out the window. Movies like Reefer Madness, which were shown, they're funny as hell when you watch them now. Reefer Madness makes me laugh every single time I see it. I mean, laugh out loud. Sadly, that's not what it was made for. It's not a comedy. In fact, I was shown that movie when I was in middle school. I'm not kidding. Jane, get my reefers. If you've never seen the movie, it's worth watching. But when you're done laughing, realize that that was actually shown as a propaganda film in our country for generations. We wanted kids to think that if you smoked pot, you were going to grab a gun, shoot your girlfriend, not remember doing it. It's ridiculous. All of these things come across to the addict as hate. You understand? You won't believe how much more you'll get with love. When somebody thanks me for having a channel that they can come to before they're fully sober, then the rest of the world is doing something wrong. Honestly, if that sticks out as so damn unusual, then the rest of the world is really messing up. Imagine the concept. Wrap your dome around this. Seriously, I say it and I brush over it, but I want you to think about it for a second. Somebody shows up and says, man, I can't control this stuff. If you can't control this stuff, of course you showed up high. When are you not high? Honestly, we would have to run the meeting in your bedroom and wake you up for it to get you not high. That's addiction. You're always high, always under the influence. That's what addiction is, right? It's the inability to quit something even though the consequences have become brutal. That's addiction. You're getting arrested. You're going to rehab. You've lost your wife. You've lost your car. You've lost your place to live, and you can't stop. That's addiction. All the other definitions are horse crap. That's it. In spite of overwhelming consequences, you cannot stop the use, then you're addicted. Whether that's gambling, right? You're not paying rent because you're gambling. Okay. You're addicted. It's cost you 4 relationships and a marriage and a kid, and you're addicted. The inability to stop in the face of unbelievably bad consequences. So how weird is it that if somebody shows up under the influence, we say, you have to leave? It's not funny. I mean, I'm not laughing, ha. I'm laughing, you got to be kidding. You got to be kidding. And the amazing thing is, the same treatment happens with families. Somebody shows up and says, I can't stop doing what I'm doing. Are you high? You come back here when you're sober. Really? I realize that it's a lack of understanding. And I realize that it's got to really hurt from a parent's standpoint. But when loved ones get on board, people get healed. Honestly. It's amazing how much support actually gets people out of that life and into some kind of a productive existence. So now that that's covered, let's go over relapses. Do you know how often people will show love and support and they're there for you until you stumble? And then they go, oh, man, I knew you were going to do this. Sadly, relapse is a part of recovery. And there's no mathematic equation. You can't say, yeah, the average person is going to relapse 26 times so that a family member can keep track. Well, we're in the 20s. We'll be out of the woods soon. Some people don't relapse. It's rare as hell. My brother Johnny is 4 years off alcohol today, and he's never relapsed. I would say that the biggest reason for that is because the opposite of addiction is connection, and my brother is connected to so many people, so many things. He quit at a great time. The lifeboat, the lifeboat. Chase the Heat was taking off. He was meeting all of these new people, and all of this exciting stuff was going on, and he was connected every day to so many people. Honestly, in a very big way, Chase the Heat is for my brother what the lifeboat is for me. The difference being that he talks about something else, but it's the same thing. He goes there when he's having a bad day, he tells the whole world. If you've spent any amount of time on my brother's channel, you've watched him go through deaths, right? A divorce, everything. Just came out and shared it with the entire world. Connection. It's done absolutely amazing things to keep him from ever relapsing even once. Beautiful. Not in any way, shape, or form the norm. It is the exception, not the rule. The number of times that I've relapsed in my life, I haven't relapsed in going on 8 years. I think my last one was The Great Relapse, which would be a good name for a book. Right? Tell me that's not a good name for a book. The Great Relapse. The one where it all comes together. If families realized that we were hanging out and waiting for the Great Relapse, that's the one we're looking for, man. And if you were there to love the person when they relapsed, if they came in kicking the ever-loving crap out of themselves, because that's what you do when you relapse. You kick the crap out of yourself. You beat yourself in ways that you can't imagine. If you've never been addicted, you don't know what it feels like to relapse, but you beat the crap out of yourself. You feel lower than low, and you shouldn't, but you do. And if you've got 60 days of sobriety or you've got 100 days of sobriety, you go, I blew it. I blew all that. All that's gone. You know, in your mind, you're back to being the guy that you were before you decided to quit. And that's not the case. It's a stumble. This is a process of learning how to live without booze or without drugs. That's what the process is. Learning how to do it. There's a really, really great illustration that I haven't used in a long time, but we watch kids try to walk and they take 2 steps and we cheer. Nobody goes, he fell on his butt again. Kid's worthless. He's never going to learn to walk. Honestly. Like half of the time that he gets onto 2 feet, he falls onto his diaper. The kid's worthless. Ridiculous, right? No one would ever do that. Or if you teach a kid anything, riding a bike, he just fell over. Put the training wheels back on. This kid's never going to get it. If we treated people when they relapsed the way that we do when a kid lands on his butt in a diaper, no, you cheer the 100 days. So you fell. Get back up. You were doing great. You were doing awesome. Let's talk. Let's talk. What happened today that made you say, I'm going to use? Tell me what happened. Let's figure it out. Let's make this the great relapse. You're good. It's just a relapse, man. It's just a relapse. It's not the end of the journey, man. Holy crap. It's not even close. What, you're going to go back? No. We're going to keep moving forward. What made that happen today? When do you think you started? Did the relapse start 2 weeks ago? Let's go look at your journal. Let's read what's been happening for the last 3 weeks. Imagine if your loved one said that to you. Let's figure it out together. Let's sit down. Let's go through your journal. If it's too private, just read it with me in a room. Tell me if you come across anything. I'm not going to judge you. Let me read it. I'll bet you I'll find it. I'll bet you let me read your journal and I'll tell you when you started. I promise. You might not even see it. Let someone else read it. Watch how fast they go. Ooh, started getting squirrely on December the 6th. Yeah. Everything sounded different. The tone, right? Everything. The way you wrote, just you weren't right. So what happened then? Let's read the day before, figure out what happened. If people held your hand when you fell down and relapsed, how much faster would you get to the great relapse? Instead, what do? We make them feel worse. And what do we do when we feel worse? Make it go away, right? I used a needle, somebody uses a bottle, whatever. But we make that pain go away. So I have a great idea. Let's make that pain worse. Let's pile it on. Let's see how bad we can make that addict feel. Hell, we might be able to get an overdose out of it if we really push, right? Sadly, the best intentions of loved ones cause overdoses. They really do. It's not their fault. There's no course on this, right? There's not a course on this. There should be, but there's not. And I shouldn't say that. There are courses on this. It's just very few people will ever get a chance to go to them. Like if you go to Al-Anon, like those kind of meetings for people whose loved ones are addicted, that's a course. It really is. And you'll meet a bunch of other people who go, yeah, my loved one just relapsed too. Well, I know how that feels because it's happened to me. And they all start talking and beautiful things take place. Trouble is, the average person's never going to go to one of those meetings, right? And do you know why? Because they're embarrassed. They're embarrassed. Their kid's on dope. They obviously did something wrong. Their loved one, their husband, their wife, their sister, their brother, whatever, had to be something we did wrong, right? I mean, a person doesn't just become an addict because they're born that way. We must have done something. Actually, they're born that way. Crazy, right? But they are. They're born that way. In diapers. The brain chemistry's done. It's already there. If they start to experiment and they get, that's going to happen. It's terrifying. Unfortunately, the world is not very educated on this stuff. Even people in this business are not very educated on this stuff. This is a really complex problem, and the world seems to go at it from the wrong approach almost all the time. So here's my advice, right? Sum all this up. Let's say your loved one becomes addicted to drugs and you have no idea how to cope with it. 2 pieces of advice. Try to find out how. Instead of assuming you can figure it out and you're smart enough, why don't you talk to somebody that understands what this means? Get some professional advice. Don't want to pay for that? Go talk to a bunch of people at an NA meeting that have been sober for a while. Ask them what they think. Again, they won't do that because there's the scarlet letter, right? That drug addiction scarlet letter is worse for the people who aren't using. The family that is just ashamed that they've got somebody in their family that's on that. Think shame helps? Huh? How do you think shame helps? Good stuff, right? Here's the easy default setting. Ask yourself, is what I'm doing coming across as love? If the answer is no, you're not helping. You can do all the disappointment in the world you want, as long as that person doesn't see it. You want to be disappointed? Go be disappointed in your room when your loved one can't see it. No one's going to be proud of somebody in their family that's an addict. That's not human nature. Human nature, you're going to have that disappointment and that feeling of shame. It's human nature. But it's a friggin' error if you let the addicted person see that. And in 2023, that error can kill people. 10, 15 years ago, we had the luxury of not being good at dealing with someone in our family who was an addict. If you screwed up 10 or 12 times, what's the big deal? Now, if you screw up 10 or 12 times, there's a good chance they're going to be dead. I'm not making more of this than it is, people. I'm not. Part of me would like to come on here every day and say, I'd like to tell you the emails I got today of the people who said so-and-so said she just lost 2 people that she knows, not family members, but people in the neighborhood. So-and-so said his brother's daughter just OD'd. If I took the time to do that at the beginning of every show, the lifeboat would be 5 to 10 minutes shorter every day. Every day. The number of people that reach out to me to tell me that they know somebody that just OD'd, I can't remember the last day that I didn't get an email like that. And I'm not exaggerating. I don't remember. Months and months and months. Probably since we came back, which would be almost a year ago. Every single day. So we don't have the luxury anymore of not being good at this. We don't. Got to get good at it real quick. So until you get it figured out, err on the side of love. Err on the side of compassion, caring. If the person who is addicted knows that you're not very good at this, but you love the crap out of them, it'll go a long way. If you make them feel like you've never been more disappointed in your life, they're going to put more needles in their arm. They're going to drink more. They're going to snort more. It may be absolutely natural to feel that way. Letting them know you feel that way can kill them. Sucks, right? For real, sucks. But that's where we're at. We can't afford for anyone in addiction to take 6 more months to get it right. Because now it's a roulette wheel. And it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. If people continue to use the garbage that's on the street today, they're going to die. Even if the drug they're doing isn't an opiate, it doesn't matter. These are the conversations that we should be having with kids. Can't do Ritalin, can't do Adderall, can't do Xanax, can't do Valium, because they're all being faked. Can't take any pain medication because they're being faked. Don't buy anything in a powder because they're being cut with a drug that will kill you. 2 milligrams will take you off the planet. You buy an 8-ball. You know how many milligrams they're cutting into that 8-ball? You get a hot spot, you're dead. I did a show right after they found that family in Colorado. Well, family and friends in Colorado. They didn't get out of the kitchen. The person that cut the blowout on the kitchen counter, and they had cocktails ready to go and everything else. Nobody got out of the kitchen. They snorted that first line and dropped dead where they were. This stuff is really dangerous. The drugs that are on the street today are killing people fast. Fast. It's also so damn cheap that people don't hit rock bottom the way they used to. Bags aren't 15, 20 bucks. They're $2.50. You can panhandle enough money to support a habit. I had to rob banks to support a habit. Now you can literally panhandle. Guys can walk around picking up tin cans and bringing them to the redemption center and get enough money to support a habit. Think any of this is an accident, you're ignorant as hell. I'm sorry. If you don't see the handiwork of the countries that hate us in this, then you're ignorant. Sadly, really, really sadly. $2.50 a fix. Holy crap. And enough xylazine to knock you out for 8 or 9 hours. It's not like you're going to fix 4 times a day. You fix once, the xylazine knocks you completely unconscious. You wake up dope sick because you've been unconscious while the opiate's been wearing off. This stuff is terrifying. It is. Maybe this wasn't your drug of choice. And maybe it's just scary to me in a way that it isn't to other people. But by God, if I was still doing what I was doing, I'd be dead. My brother would be dead. Everybody I know. It's a different world. This isn't about making money anymore. It's about trying to kill us. I cannot stress this enough. This should be the only show I do. I know that this is not a feel-good show, and it's probably not helping the people who are on the boat stay sober. But this really should be. I should do this show once a day. You know somebody that's got a kid who's using, please show them this show. Seriously, share this out. Because there's not enough people having this conversation. We don't have the luxury to treat addicts badly anymore. Not if we want them to see Christmas. Hell, not if we want them to see the 4th of July. The stuff that's out there is killing people. And I keep saying 350 a day. I'm probably not in the ballpark. I'm really not. The US of A decided that we're losing too many people. So they started doing some really incredible stuff. Like, you don't have to have a prescription in any of the 50 states anymore to get Narcan, because this is the antidote to all of these people dying. There are a lot of places that are just giving it away, right? Come in and get it. Get as much of it as you want. Any needle exchange program in the US, harm reduction, go into any one of those and they'll give you as much Narcan as you can carry, because they know it's saving people's lives. Was saving people's lives. See, once the US of A started giving out stuff that could cure that, they changed the recipe. For real. Now we've got opiates that are 100 times stronger than fent. You need that. And they cut it with xylazine. And Narcan won't do a thing for xylazine. Nothing. Do you think it's a coincidence that as we start to get a handle on how to bring people back, the recipe changes? Do you think that's an accident? Think about it this way. If you're listening to my voice and your kid or your loved one or whoever is addicted to drugs, they've been attacked by China. Think about it that way. Seriously. They've been attacked by a foreign country. This is the enemy trying to kill your kid. Maybe if we think about it in those terms, we will view this whole thing differently, right? Because you can get pissed when someone else is coming after your kid, can't you? Can't you? Because I think it would help. Get angry, not at them. Get angry at the people trying to kill them, because I think that would probably be a better approach. But that's my humble opinion. Hold on one second. One of the terms that you hear a lot that just gets bantied about quite a bit is enabling. And what enabling used to mean may not be what it means today. But here's, if you're a parent and you're giving your kid money to go buy dope, that's enabling them. That's enabling them. I would not recommend giving someone money to go buy dope in this environment unless you plan on sitting on top of them the entire time. I mean, again, there are exceptions to the rule. If you're trying to keep somebody at your house until they get to rehab, they're going to go out the window if they're dope sick. Might be worth giving them something and watching them do it. I mean, there are exceptions, but I would not be, they're sick and they're hurting. Okay, well, let's get you some help. And that help is not another fix of fentanyl. That's enabling. That can kill. Now what you need to do is get really personally involved in their recovery. Look them in the eye. Tell them you love them and you're not leaving until they're clean. We're going to figure this out. I'm not going to have you die in the street. I care too much. So we're going to figure this out together because I'm not leaving. That's tough. And it's love. Lead with love. Lead with love. Don't lead with tough. Leading with tough can kill people. In fact, I take that back. Leading with tough is killing people. A ton of them. All right, peeps. That's 60 minutes right there. I'm Tommy Scoville. I'm going to be back in the morning. And this little fur ball, can we get a yawn out here? No yawn? All right. I tried. All righty. That's Cat in a Basket. Good night, everybody.